Museums display ancient bones and tell us everything died thousands of years ago. Neat extinction timelines, convenient explanations. But there's a problem with that story, and it starts with the animals that shouldn't have been alive in the 1800s. Creatures documented in expedition journals that were later sealed. Beasts catalogued in zoological records that quietly disappeared. Animals so magnificent, their very existence threatened the official narrative of what the world used to be. The Tartarian civilization didn't just build impossible architecture, they kept something else, living proof of a world far grander than we're allowed to remember. When you examine suppressed expedition logs from the 1700s and 1800s, you find descriptions that don't match anything in modern zoos. Explorers writing about creatures that tower over elephants, naturalists sketching birds whose wingspan cast shadows the size of houses, handlers documenting reptiles that stretched longer than ships. These weren't myths passed down through generations. These were eyewitness accounts from trained observers who had no reason to lie, no audience demanding sensationalism, just field notes meant for scientific record. Then something changed. After Tartaria's collapse, these creatures vanished. Not gradually, through natural extinction. Systematically. As if someone decided certain animals couldn't be allowed to exist anymore. Starts with what they called the imperial mammoth. Official paleontology insists mammoths went extinct around 10,000 years ago. Ice Age casualties, ancient history. Except Tartarian records describe mammoths standing 16 feet tall at the shoulder, twice the height of African elephants, walking through specially constructed enclosures in the 1700s. Their tusks curved upward in ivory arcs longer than a grown man. Their shaggy coats ranged from deep brown to reddish gold, depending on the region. Human caretakers barely reached their knees. Children would stand beneath these creatures, looking up at living mountains of muscle and fur. These weren't ceremonial animals kept in cages for display. They were partners. The records describe imperial mammoths as intelligent, trainable, bonding deeply with their handlers across years of work. They helped with heavy construction that required both power and precision. They transported high-ranking officials across distances. They participated in ceremonies not as spectacles, but as honoured members of society. The relationship between Tartarians and these giants represented something we're told never existed. Harmony between humans and megafauna. Cooperation at a scale that makes no sense if mammoths died off millennia ago. But if they survived until the 1800s, if they worked alongside a civilization we're taught to forget, then the extinction timeline collapses. So the imperial mammoths had to go. Within decades of Tartaria's fall, they disappeared, hunted relentlessly, their ivory harvested, their meat consumed, their existence scrubbed from official natural history. Now look up, way up. The sky titan eagle makes modern birds of prey look like sparrows. Documentation describes wingspans reaching 40 feet tip to tip. When these creatures spread their wings, they cast shadows the size of small buildings. Standing on the ground, they reached the height of horses. Their talons were larger than human hands. Their feathers shimmered with bronze and copper iridescence that made them appear forged from living metal in direct sunlight. These eagles weren't kept in cages, they were partnered, bonded with handlers from the moment they hatched. They served as aerial scouts, spotting threats from distances no human eye could match. They carried messages across vast territories faster than any horse. They accompanied Tartarian royalty as ceremonial companions, symbols of vision and authority. The accounts describe them as fiercely loyal, protective of their bonded humans, capable of recognizing hundreds of individual people. They nested in specially constructed towers throughout Tartarian cities. Their presence was considered a blessing. Their cry could be heard for miles, announcing their approach long before they arrived. When Tartaria fell, the sky titan eagles became targets immediately. Too visible, too magnificent, too connected to human partners who might remember what was lost. They were hunted from the skies, their nesting towers demolished, their eggs destroyed before they could hatch. Within a single generation, the skies emptied. Humanity forgot that birds could ever be so grand. Then there were the ironback bison, not the American bison that barely survived near extinction, something standing 10 feet tall at the shoulder, almost twice the height of modern buffalo. The distinctive feature was a heavy ridge running across the back, a thick plate of dense muscle and bone that gave them their name. Their fur was so coarse and thick, it resembled armor more than hair. Predators that attacked them rarely survived the encounter. The horns curved outward, nearly 6 feet wide enough for a person to stand comfortably between them, wide enough to impale multiple threats with a single toss of that massive head. But the ironback bison wasn't just kept in menageries. It was the foundation of Tartarian plains agriculture. Managed herds provided meat, leather, bone tools, and labour. The animals were semi-domesticated, comfortable with human presence, essential to the Tartarian way of life. Herders lived alongside these giants for generations. They knew individual animals by sight. They understood herd dynamics. They managed breeding for strength, temperament, and productivity. The systematic destruction of the ironback bison served multiple purposes after Tartaria's collapse. It eliminated a crucial food source. It removed evidence of sophisticated animal management. It erased proof that such magnificent creatures had recently existed. What remains today is a shadow. Modern bison are smaller cousins that survived precisely because they were less impressive, less obviously connected to an erased civilization. The ironback was too grand to allow continuation because it proved something unacceptable. Sophisticated animal management stretching back centuries. Agricultural systems built around creatures that weren't supposed to exist according to the official timeline. Now consider what swam in Tartarian waters. The crystal serpent wasn't mythology. Documentation describes snakes with scales that glinted like glass, catching light like living prisms. When sunlight struck their coils, rainbows scattered across enclosure walls. These serpents grew over 80 feet long, longer than 2 city buses placed end to end. Their heads alone measured the size of large dogs. The crystalline scales weren't decorative. They were functional, sharp enough to cut through wood and metal, which meant enclosures required specially fitted stone construction. Despite this fearsome appearance, crystal serpents showed no aggression toward humans. They fed on large prey, deer, wild pigs, occasionally cattle, but handlers worked alongside them for generations without incident. The scales held value beyond measure. Craftsmen could fashion them into lenses that magnified light with perfect clarity, mirrors that reflected without distortion, decorative elements that never dulled or tarnished. A single shed skin could supply a workshop for years, which explains why they became immediate targets when Tartaria collapsed. Too valuable, too visible, too impossible to explain within the new framework being constructed. The last crystal serpents were hunted in their stone enclosures, their scales harvested, their existence methodically erased from natural history. Today, when someone reports seeing giant snakes, they face immediate dismissal. The crystal serpent left no convenient fossil record because its elimination was too recent, too deliberate, but perhaps the most remarkable achievement of Tartarian animal husbandry stood 30 feet tall. The tower giraffe wasn't the African species we recognize. This was something bred and refined across generations. Its neck alone exceeded the height of modern giraffes. Muscled and powerful, thick enough to support a head that could survey entire landscapes. The hide displayed patterns that seemed almost geometric, deliberately designed rather than randomly evolved. Standing beside a tower giraffe, a person barely reached the animal's front leg. Children would crane their necks until they ached, trying to glimpse its face. These creatures served specific purposes. Their exceptional height made them living observation towers. Trained tower giraffes could spot approaching threats from miles away. Predators, storms, hostile forces. Their eyesight distinguished individual humans at distances that would blur for other animals. Their memory proved exceptional. recognizing partners even after years of separation. They bonded with handlers as deeply as dogs, called to them with low rumbling vocalizations humans felt in their chests, mourned when partners died, sometimes refusing food for days. The tower giraffe couldn't be allowed to survive because its existence proved selective breeding far beyond what conventional timelines permit. Its sophistication demonstrated generations of careful animal husbandry. Its partnership with humans revealed relationships the new order wanted permanently forgotten. So, they were killed. Their bloodlines terminated. What remains today are smaller cousins that survived precisely because they were less magnificent, less connected to an erased civilization. Meanwhile, in the water features of Tartarian menageries lurked something from nightmares. The stone-jaw crocodile measured 40 feet from snout to tail, 4 times the length of modern crocodiles. When it lay motionless in water, it resembled a floating log until explosive movement revealed the truth. Its jaw contained thick, blunt teeth designed for crushing, for breaking bones, for destroying anything entering its domain. The bite force exceeded anything alive today. Armoured plates across its back were so thick that arrows bounced off harmlessly. Spears couldn't penetrate. Only specially designed weapons could harm a stone-jaw crocodile, and handlers rarely needed to try. Despite their terrifying nature, these creatures were kept in controlled environments, massive stone pools with walls too high to climb, feeding systems that maintained handler safety, prey delivered through channels requiring no human proximity, observation platforms allowing public viewing from secure heights. Tartarians understood that even fearsome creatures served ecological purposes. Stone-jaw crocodiles controlled waterways, kept other predator populations balanced, maintained systems in regions where they were carefully managed. When Tartaria fell, the stone-jaw crocodiles became uncontrolled threats. Without handlers to manage them, without feeding systems to satisfy them, they transformed from assets into dangers. Populations that replaced the Tartarians hunted them relentlessly. Lacking knowledge of coexistence, the last stone-jaw crocodiles died in forgotten swamps. Their bones sank into mud. Their existence faded from legend into myth, into nothing. Move north to the coldest exhibits. The frost bear stood 13 feet tall when upright. A 2-story wall of white fur and muscle, shoulders broader than doorways, paws nearly the size of dinner plates, each claw longer than a human finger. A single swipe could kill instantly. Yet frost bears showed surprising gentleness with familiar handlers. Tartarians had maintained relationships with these populations for generations. Certain bloodlines were semi-domesticated, comfortable with human presence, willing to work alongside handlers. Cubs raised from birth bonded with their keepers, like children. They served as guards in northern settlements. No predator challenged a frost bear. No enemy approached gates they protected. Their sense of smell detected threats from miles away. Their hearing caught sounds beyond human perception. When northern Tartarian settlements collapsed, frost bears lost their partners. Without human support, they struggled. Without managed territories, they came into conflict with replacement populations. They were hunted as monsters, as livestock threats, as terrors requiring elimination. The polar bear survives today as a smaller cousin, adapted to a world without human partnership, existing because it avoided the fate of its greater relatives. The frost bear lives only in legend now, in stories of abominable creatures that probably weren't entirely mythological. Forest exhibits showcased another engineering marvel. The thunder elk stood 11 feet at the shoulder, with antlers spreading 13 feet wide, branch upon branch of bone weighing more than a grown man. A human beside one would barely reach halfway up its chest, but the antlers weren't merely impressive for their size, they were acoustic instruments. When a thunder elk called, the antlers resonated, amplified the sound into something that carried for miles. The call resembled rolling thunder. During mating season, entire forests shook with their calls. Sound carried across valleys, echoed off mountains, announced presence to every creature within hearing. These weren't decorative features. They were functional adaptations that Tartarians understood and utilized. Thunder elk were central to forest management. Their grazing patterns maintained clearings. Their trails became paths humans followed. Their presence indicated healthy ecosystems. Where thunder elk thrived, forests provided. Tartarian foresters worked with herds for generations, understanding their movements, protecting breeding grounds, harvesting sustainably from populations that remained healthy. This wasn't primitive animal use. This was sophisticated ecological management that modern conservation barely approaches. The systematic elimination of thunder elk destroyed that relationship completely. Without them, forest management collapsed. Without their trails, forests became impassable. Without their grazing, clearings vanished under overgrowth. Forests changed fundamentally when thunder elk died, became wilder, less accessible, less productive. Modern elk carry distant echoes of the thunder that once filled Tartarian forests, smaller, quieter, less magnificent, but surviving. Aquatic exhibits featured ancient dignity incarnate. The river Titan turtle moved through specially designed ponds, with shells measuring 20 feet across. Living architecture the size of small cars. Shells covered in ridges that seemed older than time itself. These turtles moved slowly through water, their flippers pushing with enough force to create visible currents. Their passage stirred pond bottoms. Their heads were large as human torsos. Beaks could crush shellfish, slice vegetation, defend against threats, yet they remained gentle, patient, moving through their world with the calm of creatures that had seen centuries pass. River Titan turtles lived for centuries. Individual turtles were known across multiple human generations. They carried histories on their shells. Tartarian scholars studied growth rings, wear patterns, scars that told stories of events long past. These weren't just animals. They were living libraries, records of environmental changes across hundreds of years. Their presence in waterways indicated pure water. Healthy ecosystems maintained balance. Many Tartarian cultures considered them sacred. Their slow wisdom represented perspective that fast-living humans lacked. Their patience was legendary. Their memory perfect. When zoos fell, some escaped to wild waterways. They survived longer than most giants. Too slow to hunt easily. Too hidden in deep waters to locate quickly. But eventually, even they were found. Shells were harvested for crafting medicine trophies. Meat was taken. Centuries of accumulated wisdom ended. The giant tortoises of Galapagos are small cousins, remnants of lineages that once included true titans. River Titan turtles exist now only in stories and fossil fragments that paleontologists incorrectly date to millions of years ago, when they actually lived until just centuries past. The predator exhibits held the ultimate symbol. The golden mane lion stood 6 feet at the shoulder, almost twice the size of modern lions. Muscles rippled beneath coats that gleamed in any light. Manes flowed long and full, shining like spun gold. The mane extended beyond the head, covering shoulders and back. In morning light, these lions appeared crowned with fire. When they walked, paws left prints nearly the size of human heads. Their roars could be heard for miles, sounds that silenced everything else. That commanded attention. That announced absolute authority. Golden mane lions were symbols of Tartarian authority. Royal families kept them as emblems of power, but also as partners. Certain bloodlines had been bred for generations alongside human families. They recognized their royal partners, protected them, would die before allowing harm to bonded humans. The relationship between Tartarian royalty and these lions was legendary. Lions attended ceremonies, stood beside thrones, accompanied rulers on important journeys. The bond wasn't master and pet, it was alliance. When Tartaria fell, golden mane lions fought, defended their partners against destruction forces. Many died protecting royals who were being hunted. Survivors were targeted specifically because their loyalty to the old order remained absolute, because they represented everything new rulers wanted erased. Modern lions are diminished, smaller, less magnificent, disconnected from human partnership. Golden mane lions live only in heraldry now. Lions rampant on noble crests, images of what was once real, reduced to symbols of deliberately severed connections. Every creature tells the same story. Imperial mammoths standing 16 feet tall, sky titan eagles with 40-foot wingspans, crystal serpents stretching 80 feet long, frost bears towering 13 feet upright, golden mane lions twice modern size. These weren't mythology, they were reality, kept in Tartarian menageries, partnered with human handlers, living alongside a civilization that was systematically erased. The animals were erased too, because their existence proved the world was once greater, because their magnificence revealed what was taken, because their partnership with humans showed what was destroyed. The giants are gone, but memory persists, encrypted sightings, in fossil fragments dated incorrectly, in the deep knowing that something magnificent once existed. Tartarian zoo animals were real. They were eliminated deliberately. And those who eliminated them don't want you connecting these pieces. Don't want you asking why such creatures existed alongside advanced civilizations. Don't want you questioning what else was lost when the reset occurred. The evidence remains in fragments, in the architectural proportions of empty menageries, in the ecological collapses that followed their disappearance, in the world that became smaller, less wondrous, more controlled. That's what happens when you erase the magnificent. The beasts that walked beside Tartarians weren't supposed to survive into recorded history, but they did. And when they were systematically eliminated, they took with them proof of a world we're no longer allowed to remember. The empty menageries remain. The ecological voids persist. And somewhere in the fragments of suppressed expedition, journals and sealed zoological archives, the truth waits for those willing to see it.